Yo, what's going on, Latin Wealth family? Welcome to another episode to the Latin Wealth Podcast. Hope you guys are doing well. I'm doing phenomenal. You guys already know. If you're watching online, because you can see we're back in the studio. You guys know I love being in the studio. And I also love being in the studio with a guest, which we have on today. And we're going to give you some background information on her and what she does and whatnot. Phenomenal guest. Really excited for this conversation. First and foremost, she is an entrepreneur, a content creator, and with over 11 years of social media experience, she has learned to apply that experience to her business and content creations and things of that nature. And she's grown her social media following to over 600,000 followers across Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and just creating content about things that she's interested in, that she likes, such as lifestyle, beauty, wellness, and things of that nature, even entrepreneurship as well. She's even done some major brand partnerships with companies like Billy and Neutrogena, and her husband are also co-owners of a company which they focus on customized commercial space and modern home building. She's doing a lot. Phenomenal guest. Really excited for this conversation. Welcome to the podcast, Thalia LeBlanc. How you doing today?
I am great. Oh my gosh, you did your homework.
Is
this what you do?
Yeah, got to do it. I was gonna say you got to do it right with the introduction. You know what I'm saying? So
I appreciate that.
Thank you for coming to the studio and coming on the podcast. Really appreciate it. Excited to get into this conversation. Usually, what we start on this podcast is just a little bit about yourself, your background. When we didn't hit record, you were talking about how you from New York, and now you're staying in Dallas and whatnot. So love to know, how did you guys end up from New York to Dallas, and just your childhood and growing up.
Yeah. So this being the Latin Wealth, podcast. I think it's important to talk about the background and how our parents got us here. I'm first generation American. So my parents were Dominican. Both of my parents are Dominican. And my mom actually worked at a chocolate factory in New York City while she was getting her visa. She just had a working visa. So she wasn't like a permanent resident of the United States yet. And her going back and forth, she met my dad in DR one summer. They started dating. I came about.
Yeah.
And then they were
like,
like,
were you born in the DR?
No, I wasn't. My mom actually made, and this is a thing, I thank my parents for this because they really were thoughtful. They were like, I want to make sure I'm in the United States when I have Thalia to make sure that, she has the opportunities. Because if you're born in DR, it's really hard to oh my gosh, to get over here, it's crazy. So we went back and forth for multiple years. I was raised a total of 11 years in the Dominican Republic, and then a few years in New York, back and forth. And then eventually, once my dad got his full working visa, he was actually a pediatrician. He was a doctor out there, and he had to do all his testing and stuff to be one here. He passed, thank goodness, because he was very smart. And he was like, you know what? I have a friend in Dallas, and he's a doctor, and he says that Dallas is booming, and it's a great place to raise a family and to start your own practice. And eventually, after a few years of living in Dallas, he was able to do that, and he had a practice for 16 years. And that's why I got here to Dallas. It was just like my parents, because I was 11,
Right. So talk to us about living in the DR, and how was that compared to New York and even to Dallas. You moved to Dallas when you're 11. I mean, you experienced a lot already. So talk to us about that.
Yeah. So living in DR definitely makes you appreciative of the things once you get over here. Like even the stark difference between DR and New York, I feel like they were both kind of like struggles in a way. Like in New York, we lived in a basement. It was
what part of New York?
We lived in Queens.
Got it.
Yeah, Queens, New York, and Woodside. We lived in my aunt's house underneath, in her basement, and it was hella cold. And I remember we used to sleep on one bed, all four of us, me, my mom, my dad, and my brother. Multiple covers, multiple socks. It was so cold. In the DR, we didn't have any running water in our houses. We didn't have electricity most days. So, you learn to kind of just adapt. So now that when we moved to Dallas, I was like, oh, this is fancy. This is a lot of space. This is fancy. Right. This is great. So it was a huge difference. And I actually hated Dallas when I moved here. I was like, oh my gosh, there's going to be people on horses and it's just going to be country. And it was a little bit, but not as much as I expected.
So what did you learn from, you said, there was some struggles in the DR and New York, besides learning how to adapt, which, a lot of us that come from those environments, that's something that we just pick up on. We got to learn how to adapt and just to different circumstances. What else, looking back, did you learn from those moments?
So looking back at those moments, it just made me less picky with a lot of stuff.
Mm.
Like I'm just like I just have this sense of gratefulness just for I'm like, man, I've had worse. Like this
Yeah.
isn't even that bad. Like, you know, we've been through worse situations. Like, oh, we don't have power for a day because Alaska happened, you know, like
Yeah.
last year when the whole freeze, you know, you just
Mhm.
learn to adapt and you learn to be grateful for even like the small things, like having a toilet that flushes, you know, having water that runs. I also don't really take hot showers because I've never grown up with hot water.
Mm.
So like to this day, people think I'm weird because I take cold showers.
Side note on that, like, you know, there's a lot of health benefits with taking cold showers and
Yeah.
whatnot, and so like I've been trying to do it a lot more recently.
It's hard though.
It's difficult. I be telling my wife like I stick my head in real quick and then pop it out.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, that's crazy. That's dope. Yeah.
Yeah, you just learn to be. I don't know. I feel like I have tougher skin,
Mm.
and I'm not. Even though I am pretty like girly, like I'm a girly girl, but I'm
Mhm.
very like, man, like listen, if this is we gotta eat dirt today, I guess we're eating
Yeah,
dirt.
for sure. Man, that's what's up. Okay, so you moved to Dallas when you were 11. At first, you didn't really like it. It's kind of you feeling like it might be country or something like that.
Yeah.
Talk to us about your experience growing up in Dallas.
Oh, so man, it was a different time than it is now. I definitely faced some adversity,
Mm.
some I don't know if it's I guess some prejudice. I'm not really sure, you know, because I'm, you know, Dominicans, you know, where I in comparison to like most black people in the United States, I'm like light skinned, right? But for Latina, I'm dark. I'm a dark Latina, you know, so I'm an Afro Latina. So coming here, like coming from New York, I remember the first day of school and I was wearing like a jean skirt with like white Jordans with like a gold trim and crocodile skin. Like it was like the
Yeah,
whole
yeah.
nine. It was like they were super dope Jordans and like a Fila shirt and my hair was curly. It was like the two strands with the gel, you know, very like New York
Yeah, New
Latina.
York.
And I came in and like the first thing a girl ever said to me, she was like, "Why are you wearing tennis shoes with a skirt? You're supposed to wear flip-flops." And I was like, "Tennis shoes? I don't play tennis. These are sneakers." Like I was so confused
Yeah,
because it was
confused.
two different worlds. And I felt like just like, dang, like I don't belong. And it was kind of the first few years I was trying to figure out where I belonged because in the Hispanic community I was still not, but then with the black community I was still not, and then like with the white community I was definitely not. So it was a big adjustment, and I spent a few years going through different phases. You know, I was preppy one year, super like, you know, Latina one year. Another year I was like I had my emo phase, and you know, it was all kinds of stuff.
Yeah,
So
trying to just figure out who you are. You know what
yeah,
I'm saying?
yeah.
When did you? At what point? Maybe it was later on in your life. When did you feel like you found truly who you were as a person?
Honestly, a few years ago.
Yeah.
It wasn't even like I'm 31 now, probably. I want to say probably when I met my husband.
Mm.
And I say that not
Is he from
because
Dallas?
he's actually from Orange, Texas, a small town. Orange, Texas. It's like Beaumont, Port Arthur, like that. The Golden Triangle, I think, is what they call it. And he is someone that's like very like blackety black, even though he light skinned. He light skinned, but
Yeah.
he's very like pro black, pro like, you know, history. He loves history. And I knew a lot about my Dominican history. I knew a lot about my Latin history. But, you know, us being black also, there's a lot of rich black history in the Dominican Republic. And I didn't really know too much of it because since we speak Spanish and there's so much more of a Spanish culture in the Dominican Republic, us as a people, we're still black and plus indigenous Tainos and Spaniard because of the colonization that happened there. And we just got really into the whole history part. We even went to Washington, D.C. to the African American Museum, and like the very first room that you go into in that museum, it talks about the transatlantic slave trade, and the first ship bellies were filled with West Africans, and the first place they landed was La Hispaniola, which is the island that we know today of Dominican Republic and Haiti. So we all come from the same place, and there's a lot of colorism and a lot of issues. Even some Dominicans don't consider themselves black. They're like, no, I'm Dominican, or I'm this and that and the third. So there's a lot of that going on. So I had to really, like, I was like, let me find out my history. Like, let me embrace, like, who I really am, because I've always felt like I didn't know where I belonged. And now I'm just like, you know, I'm Afro-Latina. Like, I'm Latina and I'm also black. So you're just going to have to get both worlds.
No, absolutely. And I think, you know, that's one of the reasons why we started the Latin Wealth podcast, is because we wanted to create that representation and show people that there are Afro Latinos that are doing great in business, that are doing well in life, or content creators, whatever the case is, and showcase that it's an issue not only in Dominican Republic but all over Cuba, Puerto Rico. I'm Puerto Rican.
Yeah.
It's all over the Caribbean. So we want to continue to take those steps to unite each other, uplift one another, and just continue to create that representation that, like, yo, if you feel like if you can't do it, we got somebody that we just interviewed that has done it, that came from where you come from, that looks like what you look like, and that's been through what you've been through. So I love that you're sharing your experience, and representation is very important.
Oh my gosh, I harp on it so much because growing up, especially in social media, like me always being a creative and wanting to create, I never saw girls that looked like me. There's a whole other slew of things that I didn't see that represented me, but one of the main obvious things was, all the popular influencers were these like white, beautiful, blue-eyed, skinny girls, and I'm like, I mean, that's cool, like that's great, but like I don't see myself anywhere. So what I harp on now when I talk to people, I want to be a content creator, but I just don't know. I just don't know. Like, I don't see anywhere that I fit in. And I was like, when you don't see yourself in the lineup, that slot is open for you to step in. And that's why you actually become the representation. And it feels weird, like, oh, but I'm not, no, you step into that spot like that. I always harp on that. That's why I think I've been able to create my own lane.
I love that. We'll jump into that right now, but I'm curious, when did you start taking social media serious, and when did you like maybe start seeing it as like a business, or when was that point for you?
Probably.
And was it always a goal for you to go in that lane?
No, actually, like I loved creating for fun, and like back in 2011, when Instagram came about, I really started sharing like my fitness journey. I was like competing in competitions, and I started gaining a lot of followers. I was like, what the heck is going on? I was like, all right, cool.
What type of competitions?
I was doing like NPC, wellness, bikini competitions, all that kind of stuff. I was on stage. I have tons of pictures and videos of back in the day when I was doing that, when I started Instagram, and Instagram kind of, the fitness Instagram stuff blew up. That was like the first niche that really was popular on Instagram. So that's where I got started. But really, truthfully, before that, I was on Zanga, MySpace. I was like, coding my little fingers away back in the day. So I've been on socials for a really long time. And I never really took it fully seriously because my main goals at first was I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to sing. I wanted to act. I'm a theater kid and choir kid at heart. Like that's what I did in middle school and high school and a little bit in college. So I never took it seriously until probably 2019 or so. I started seeing like a huge shift in the fact that there were actually roles that were being created for businesses, actually like influencer marketing roles. Also, people getting hired to do campaigns to work with Sephora or with whatever, whomever. And I was like, whoa, this is like becoming real. But it wasn't like serious until the pandemic. Then when we were all forced to be at home or whatever, I just started creating more and more content. And that's where my stuff blew up on TikTok. And overnight, it was like hundreds of thousands of followers, and I was like, oh, damn.
You're like, all right, we gotta do something about this. And okay, so at this point you're married, and what does your husband think of you blowing up on social? Like his wife is blowing up, like what's going on? Like how's he feeling?
Oh, he loves it. Yeah, he loves it. And I say it's so important to be with somebody that supports what you do, especially if it's something that you're in the public eye a lot, because that person is, when you have a lot of eyes on you and you're open to criticism, you're opening up the doors for people to like know about your life and everything else, and him included. He's a part of my life. And he is kind of like, he's on his way of being his own content creator. Like he creates his own stuff too. And he's really stepping into that, because I told him, I was like, you can do it. Like, you're so insightful. You're so intelligent. Like, you have a lot of knowledge on certain things and experience. And I think you should talk about it. But he's so supportive. And that's great, because back in the day when I was younger, I had another relationship where it was very like lots of insecurities and lots of like, oh, you're not like, all these people like your pictures. And I was like, I mean, yeah, that's like the point. Like, I'm not doing anything.
I always say this all the time. I'm like, look, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, content creator, or something like that, like your partner that you step into it with, they have to be either A, your biggest fan, or they got to be in the game with you.
Yep.
And if they're not either one, they're going to be holding you back. So,
man.
Like, just like your relationship, my wife, she's extremely supportive. You know what I'm saying? She pumping me up before I'm getting here. She's like, all right, make sure you have a good interview, have fun. You know what I'm saying?
Same.
So Oh man, that's dope.
That's great. I love that because it's super important. Like if not, when you go home, you're stressed out because then you're probably having arguments and having all this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not really conducive to being in a positive and like growing environment at
Mm-hmm.
all.
For sure, for sure. All right, so I'd love to jump into 2020 hits. You're growing your social media account. It's blowing up. Talk to us about that process and like, okay, you're like, I'm getting all these followers. Like, what do I do next? Like, what type of content do I create? Are you thinking these questions? How do you like navigate in this space and kind of like hone in like what you want to do with it? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So the tricky part about when you blow up on TikTok is that whatever you blow up for, it tends to only push you in that algorithm, whatever that is.
Mm,
And to understand better, I actually had 100 followers on TikTok. And I had this company reach out to me. They're like, hey,
100.
100, just
Okay.
100. I think I even have a picture of like a
Okay.
screenshot of it.
Okay.
And I had this company reach out. They were an agency, I think it was called like casting or something. And they were like, hey, we're looking for people that just want to create educational content for TikTok because TikTok has a new program called Learn on TikTok.
Mm,
And I said, okay, what could I teach them? At that time, I was a property manager for an apartment complex,
mm,
a high rise in Dallas. And that's what I have been doing for the past 5 years. And I was like, well, I'm into social media strategy. So I was like, this app is a lot Gen Z. Gen Z, that age, really wants to move out one day. They want to be able to have their own place. They don't want to live at
100%.
home. So I was like, let me teach them, like, these are the things that you need to have in place to get approved for an apartment. Another series is once you're in the apartment, these are the things that you look for. Like, so I did so many videos.
Mm,
They're like, we need 40 videos in 8 weeks, and if you hit this amount of followers, they made it like outrageous. Like if you hit 100,000 followers, we'll give you like a $1,500 bonus and all this stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, like all right, let me do
let me
it.
get to it.
And but if you did the 40 videos, you would get $1,000 anyway. So I was like,
Mhm.
okay, minimum I can walk away with $1,000. We're not doing anything. It's the middle of a pandemic. I could bring $1,000 extra bucks home. All
Mhm.
right, cool. And I'm a hustler, so I'm like,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
let's
Let
do
me
it.
get it. Let me get it.
So I did it, and lo and behold, the very first video hit like 7 million views overnight. I was like
What?
shook. I was like, whoa, this is crazy. And then like 100,000 followers, 200,000 followers. Within 2.5 weeks, I was like at 250,000, and I was pumping out the apartment
So
content.
you was like, "What's the bonus now?"
Oh yeah, so
You
I
said, "What's
actually
up
hit
now?"
every single bonus available. I think I walked away with like $4,000
Mm.
because I hit. You were supposed to get like roughly 15,000 views on every video. I mean, I hit everything, and I was like, whoa. The only issue was that I did this. That was my 9 to 5, and then I had to come home and create content based around apartments. I even became coined apartment bestie. I
Mm.
was on on the TV show The Real as the apartment bestie. They actually had me on for a segment.
That's crazy.
It's on TV.
That's crazy.
So it was such a cool lane. However, it wasn't my passion. And that's the thing. You
Mm.
have to have discernment. Even when something is blowing up for you, if it's not in like your heart of hearts, it's not what you actually want to do and create, eventually you're going to have to pivot and figure that out. And that's what I had to do. It came to the point where I was like, I don't want to create more apartment
You
content.
burnt out.
I'm burnt out.
Mm.
I left my job, which was right at the time. So my dad got sick with COVID at the end of 2020, and he actually passed away on Christmas Eve of 2020. That was a pivotal moment in my life.
Mhm.
I put everything away. I had to take care of my family. I had to like, make sure my mom was okay. My little brother was okay. I'm an eldest daughter. So
Yeah,
it's like, it's
yeah.
like my job, right?
Your job.
Yeah, like it feels that way. And I was like, all right, well, I need to step away. And when I came back, I was like, you know what? I'm going to share something I've never shared before. And that's when my PCOS journey came about. And
Talk
that's
about
what,
it.
that's what really cracked the can open.
Yep, yep. I would love for you to, for those that don't know what PCOS is, you can dive into a little bit and talk to us about your journey with that. And I would say a little bit of your journey, but more so of like you creating content around your journey, I would say.
Yeah, so PCOS is polycystic ovarian syndrome, and what that is a slew of different symptoms that women get. To the core, it's a hormonal and metabolic imbalance. Women experience things like lack of periods, weight gain, their cortisol levels are all jacked up, thyroid issues. Some women get facial hair, which is something I deal with. On top of a whole bunch of other stuff, some women get periods that go on forever, some don't get enough. It causes infertility, all kinds of stuff. It's a terrible, terrible thing. However, it is very prevalent. It's millions of women actually have it in the world, and a lot of women may not even know they have it. It may start off with a chin hair or a chest hair. Like you don't realize these things, but that's what's happening. Your hormones are out of whack. So I had been shaving my face since I was probably like 19, 20, and it got progressively worse as I got older. And it was something I never shared on social media for as long as I had been in the public eye. I had never shared it before. And then I was like, you know what? Like, I need to speak about something that I'm actually passionate about. And this is something that has been holding me back. I wanted to go for all of like my creative dreams, but I felt like I was holding back this secret. Like I was hiding something that I was like ashamed of. And I was like, you know what? I'm sick of this. Like I hate getting my makeup professionally done because I'm afraid of people being all up in my face, cameras everywhere. Like, I just don't know.
Yeah.
So I was like, I put out a video one day on Instagram and on TikTok, and I was like, I've never shared this before, but I have facial hair and I have to shave every day. And I just want to know if I'm alone in this. Like, there's just got to be more people. Well, to my surprise, the video went mega viral. Had millions of people view the video, and so many women commenting and DMing me. To this day, I get probably 10 messages a day. Thank you so much for posting it. I've always felt so ashamed and so alone. And once I started seeing those comments and DMs, I was like, oh, this is it. Like, this is a greater purpose. This is something that I can actually like work towards empowering more women and making more content around how I deal with it to maybe help somebody else, or even a young girl that's 16 years old. Like when I started gaining facial hair, trying to navigate and figure it out, actually having an influencer to look up to that actually shares something that you are ashamed of or feel embarrassed of.
Man, I love it. So, I mean, that was going to be one of my questions is like the importance of being authentic as a content creator and you being true to yourself. You know, a lot of people, they, like you said, you're creating content and it was just burning you out.
Yeah.
Right. It wasn't something you were passionate about, even though there was opportunities for you to be on a TV show and probably maybe you could have made more money there. Maybe you could have grown to
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
But I always say your gift will make room for you. You know what I'm saying? Your gift will open up doors for you, will provide opportunities for you. And I'm sure we'll get into it, but there's been companies that big company, Neutrogena, that's a huge company that you're collaborating with.
Yeah.
So, I mean, talk to us about you creating that content once you started to build that community. What was next for you? Like, how did you want to hone in and like maybe monetize it? Were you ever even worried about that? Or was it just all about creating value for the community?
I mean, I definitely can't lie and say like, no, I want to do all this stuff for free.
For sure.
The goal is to, make your passions like work for you, right? So, once I started being really passionate about, and that was one thing, I didn't want to be the poster child for PCOS. I didn't want you to come to my page so I can give you medical advice. That's not what I'm here for. Because a lot of girls were like, hey, can you tell me, I have these symptoms. Can you tell me what I need to test for or what I need to do? And I'm like, look, I'm not taking on that liability because that's a liability.
Yeah.
But what I want to do though, is I want to be kind of like your big sis or someone that you can look up to that lives authentically through my beauty, wellness, lifestyle, entrepreneurship content, and know that it can be done, that you could still be feminine, that you do not lack femininity, that there's nothing about you that is there's anything wrong with you just because you have facial hair or chest hair or you don't get periods. So that was like one thing that I wanted to solidify. So I was like, okay, this is the type of content that I want. So I had to be careful with the kind of content that I was putting out. Like, oh, take this, don't take that. No, this is what works for me. And I just want to be your inspo for this because we don't have that in our community or really anywhere on social media. But then I was like, I really want to make this work for me. Like I would love to partner with brands that I already use. And it just like happened at the end of 2020. Everything was kind of preparing me for this, at the end of 2021. Once all of that happened, at the end of 2021, I was already like at 300 and some thousand followers. I had this lovely woman named Tristan English. Hello, Tristan. She reached out to me. She was like, hey, do you have representation? And I said, I do not, but I'm sure would like some. And I was like, what would you do for me? She's like, well, I'm a lawyer. And, I just left Big Law to like have my own influencer agency to where she would pitch for me like to brands and give them my rates, negotiate, make sure the contracts are down packed.
Wow.
And that's when I realized, I was like, wow, I can monetize off of like my community and off of like this thing that I have built. And the top of the year, we had been working for months at the end of the year to have some brands like lined up for 2022. And at the beginning of this year, my very first collaboration was with Billy razors, which I love the Billy razors. I'm always using them.
You was already using them before.
Oh my! I'd used them since like 2019, so it was like a brand that I actually know and love. And that's the thing about like authenticity. Like sometimes you want to make sure that the people that you follow actually work with companies that they know and love and use. Sometimes, that's not always the case. It may be a company that, my agent is like, hey, like this company reached out. They want to send you something, see if you like it, and then y'all can work together. But it was so dope for it to be a company that I already talked about, that I already liked. And, they came back, and I'll be transparent. Their first thing, they were like, hey, we'll give you $8,000 for a video. And I said,
a video?
Huh? Yeah. Yeah, that was like my first big check.
You said, how many videos you want?
I'm like, $8,000 for a video. Yeah. That is crazy. And I was really nervous because like, man, I got to make sure this video is like really, really good. That video went on to hit 4 million views on TikTok. And for a sponsored ad post, those normally don't perform as well. It just happened. And, and I've had other paid posts that haven't done that well, but that changed the game for me. I was like, okay, I can really do this. So then my strategy changed from just posting for fun to like, let me post for fun and show myself authentically, but also let me be strategic and let me make sure that when brands come to my page, they can look at someone that they want to work with, so that's where it changed.
Cause I would love for you to touch on, cause there's a fine line between like, look, $8,000 per post. Most people are like, look, how many posts you want? Like, I give you like 10 of them right in a row. But it's kind of like selling yourself out, and now you just become like a commercial or advertiser on social media. So how do you just said you're strategic with it. So maybe once every couple posts you'll do a sponsored post, but how does that work for you? Like, how do you make sure that you're still being true and authentic to your own content and then, dashing in some sponsored posts as well?
Yeah, so you definitely have to be strategic about how and when you post. You definitely don't want 1 week with like 3 sponsored posts and people are like, oh my gosh, she's always just posting ads. She's getting paid for this stuff. And I think influencers in the last few years have been getting a bad rap of like, oh, every influencer sells out. They sell whatever. They advertise anything for money. And that's not true. There's been stuff that I have absolutely turned away. I'm like, nah, that doesn't really align with my brand, and I'm okay with that. Like that money isn't worth it to me. And I learned that lesson the hard way because the money did seem appealing to me for this one company. It was like a CBD company. And, I use CBD products every now and then. It wasn't anything, but it was like they wanted me to tap onto 3 products that they had. And I was like, all right, cool. So it required 3 videos. So I dropped 3 videos like within a few weeks of each other, and it was just like a lot. And they did terrible. I mean, I was like embarrassed. I was like, oh my God.
I'm about to take these down.
Yeah, I was like, I gotta take these down. But like legally, like you can't take it down. So I'm like, oh my gosh, this stuff got like 1,000 views and I have 500,000 followers on TikTok. Like, like what happened? And it's because it wasn't authentic to my content. I don't always talk about taking CBD products. It wasn't anything that my community aligned with, or that it didn't help them with PCOS. It didn't do, I mean, I made it to where it was like, this is a great thing to take during your night routine to get better sleep, because better sleep actually does help your PCOS. It just wasn't as authentic to me. So that was a really a lesson for me. And I was like, you know what? Told my agent, I was like, the money's not worth it. I want to make sure that I work with brands that I actually use or that are beneficial to like the content that I'm already creating. But you'd be surprised, you don't get as many opportunities to have like full of ads as you think.
Got it.
Because it's a lot of back and forth negotiating. Is this going to work for me? Is this going to be good for my brand or whatever? So, there's tons of room. And then obviously if you just have so many, you're just so lucky to get so many people that want to work with you, then you just have to pump out some more organic content to fill those spaces in, because you don't ever want to come off that way.
100%. So now you said was it an agency or an agent who reached out to you?
To be
a manager
represented. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm curious, for the people that are looking to monetize, that are looking to like, how do I negotiate, with other companies? Do I reach out? Do I wait till they reach out to me? And they don't have somebody representing them. What advice would you give to them? Maybe they don't have 300,000 followers. Maybe they have 10, maybe they have 50,000, whatever the case is. When do you feel like they can start monetizing? And if so, like, should I be reaching out to them or do I wait? How does that work?
Yeah, so I think that if you minimum at least have like 5,000 followers online, and I've seen people do it with less, but I always say 5,000 is like a safe number. Now with Reels and TikTok, there is such a capability for anyone to be able to go viral. So then your follower count does not matter as much as you think it does. It's the quality of content that you provide and the relatability that it can have on your audience. I think that it's absolutely possible. And that's why you should charge even more than you would think, because you're like, oh, I only have 5,000, only 5,000 people are going to see it, or 3,000 people. Yeah, but have you seen a reel? I had a reel hit like 1.4 million for the first. I've never had anything on Instagram hit this many views before in my life until last week or something. And I realized the power of reels. Like, reels is super, like, they're onto something. The discoverability is great. So what I would highly recommend is create posts with the companies, like with the brands that you want to work with, whether it's talking about them or using the product, and make a few of them. And then you need to pitch yourself using those posts. So then you reach out to them. Don't wait for people to reach out to you, because you'd be surprised what happens when you just ask, hey, my name is Thalia. I have used your products in multiple posts. I absolutely love your brand and everything that you stand for. I would love to see if you guys have any collab opportunities coming up. Keep me in mind. And, if you don't, I would love to be added to the PR list if you guys have that. Because a lot of the times, if they don't have like a paid campaign coming up, they may have giftings to where if you just ask to be put on their PR list, they ask you for your address. Hey, yeah, because they love the opportunity of people creating organic content with their products. So either you get free stuff and eventually build a relationship, and then they think of you because they know that you've done this.
And I love that. I love make the videos with the products already, then send it to them. Like, yo, send them what you're doing.
Yeah.
Opposed to you just saying, look, this is what I could potentially. These companies want to see like what that you can bring to the table. They want to see something. I guess maybe transitioning with you and your husband, and you being more transparent with some of your wins, your losses, the PCOS and whatnot. How was he feeling? Obviously he was probably still supportive and whatnot, but talk to us about that process.
Yeah, so people, that's a question that I get asked all the time. Women will be in my DMs, hey, how did you tell your spouse or like your boyfriend like that that you grew facial hair, that you have PCOS? Like, how do you deal with that? How did that happen? And I think I told him like a year in, we were just hanging out, and I was like, hey, like, can I tell you something? And he was like, what? And I was like, I have like a condition that like my hormones are really jacked up, and it causes this, and this. It causes facial hair. And I was like waiting on him to like react. And he was like, okay. And I was like, you don't care? And he was like, why would I care about that? And I was like, I don't know. There's so many societal beauty standards, and you get so whatever. So he didn't care. He was just so like, no, like, I love you. Like, what are you talking about? Like, that's fine. He was like, man, I grew up seeing my aunties with facial hair all over this time. He's like, now I just know it was PCOS that they were probably dealing with. Right. So he was very supportive. And, I do share. I'm a chronic oversharer online. So, for sure, anytime I'm like, shaving and doing all kinds of stuff online, he's very supportive, and he's never felt any kind of way about it. But I think it's all about your confidence and the confidence that I have built. And I haven't always had the confidence, but now I'm at a place where I want to feel sexy and feminine and empowered, and I want other women to see the same, even when I'm shaving or whatever it is that I'm doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking about you and your husband, you guys are in business together.
Yeah.
I need to know, like, how do you separate being in a marriage and being business partners?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Y'all in business throughout the day, and you come home. How do you keep that separate so that doesn't fall into, what you guys got going on at the house?
Yeah, so unless there's anything pertinent that needs like our actual attention, or for us to talk about it after we get home, normally when we get home and like maybe the first hour or so, we'll still like, okay, so what do we got to do tomorrow? Like, we have to meet the painters, or we got to meet the concrete people, or whatever it is. All right, cool. We got our schedule for tomorrow. Sounds good. No more talk about business. Like, we're very strict on that, because especially if in business, things aren't always going to be perfect. And I'll tell you, like, we've been going through hell with this like real estate project we currently have. Yeah. Every roadblock imaginable has happened. And, you have to be a strong, united front, because it's us against the world, right? So we make sure that if it's a negative conversation or things that are bad that are going on in our project, even more so, we're like, all right, we're done talking about that for the night. Let's pour some wine. Let's watch a movie. Let's go to dinner. Let's hang out with our dog. Like, that's it, because that can bring in, once you mix that into the household. And I'll tell you, because my parents, when my dad owned the clinics, my mom was his like firsthand, and I would watch them talk about business till midnight. And they'd be drinking and stuff and talking about business, but then arguments and it was just like never any separation. So me growing up seeing that, I was like, I don't want that for myself. Yeah, I got to the point where I would come home and I'm like, Mom, Dad, can we just not talk about the business? Like, oh my gosh, like I don't feel like we're a family anymore. Like we're just like a business. Whatever, I don't know what this is.
Just a business.
Yeah, we're just a business. Like we don't talk about, like, can we talk about family stuff? How was your day? Like,
right. Wow. So you seen that growing up? Did that instill any fear in you, like about you getting into business and with your family, or was it just like, nah, I'm just not going down that route when I get with my family?
Yeah, no. I think it actually empowered me to have a business. It made me feel like, a kid of immigrant parents or not, like if my parents could do it and they were the first ones to come to the United States and they had a business, I could do it too. It was definitely just empowering more than anything, even with the ups and downs and seeing everything. I saw what my dad could do for our family and for all of his employees, and even helping family back home. Like him doing that was much more empowering to me than seeing the bad stuff and being like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah. So how do your parents feel about you being in business and seeing what you're doing, right? Like you're in social media. It's not traditional, you know what I'm saying? They didn't grow up with it. So like how are they, I'm sure they're supportive, but how are they with you and you being in business?
So I was actually my dad's GM for his 4 clinics that he had around the Metroplex. So my dad was very trusting of me. I always had a lot more responsibility growing up, but he always trusted my decision making and everything. And he would call me for anything, like, hey, like, do you think that we should do this or we should do that? So there was like a trust built from the very beginning. And my mom also, like, she's like, man, like, you're just strong. Like, you're just like you got it. Like, it was never. Now, I will say they wanted me to finish school, and I did not finish school. I went to college for 10 years, political science major. I was supposed to do the lawyer route, and I wanted to work for the FBI at one point. I was like, very like, I want to do this.
10 years, he was in there.
Yeah, I was like, I was. But because I was running my dad's businesses at the time, I couldn't fully commit to school. So it was always like a half thing. And I was like, I have to make a decision. I was like, do I keep wasting my time in school? Like at this point, I have so much experience in real workforce. Like, do I really just want to go back? I mean, yeah, I'm not saying education is bad. I think education is great. But where I was heading in life, especially in my creative field, a political science degree wasn't going to do anything for me. So there was just no point in doing that. But my parents were always very supportive. And now that my dad's gone, he was very supportive up until the point. He always knew. He was like, oh, I know you're going to be something huge. I don't know what you're going to do, but like you're going to do amazing. And I was always supported. And I think that's important. My mom is more traditional. So even to this day, she was like, no, pero ve para atrás para la escuela, get you, sete una profesional. I'm like, Mom, I am a professional.
Right.
They think, the old school way of thinking, they sometimes think that you have to work for somebody or work for a company to like be somebody. And it's like, no, we can create our own stuff. And I can still be a professional, a respected professional 100%. In whatever field that I decide to do my own thing in.
100%. I love that. Going back to social media a little bit and being a content creator, where do you see content creators going in the next 3 to 5 years? Like what's the next thing for you? And I'm also curious, you're working with a lot of brands and you don't have to answer this, but have you ever thought about doing your own thing, creating your own? Okay. Yeah. We'll just, you know what I'm saying?
No, I want to talk about it.
No, go ahead. Talk about it. But like, cause the reason why I bring that up, because sometimes some people ask me about podcasting, like, yo, when can I start monetizing? When can I start making money with it? Usually when I hear that, it's kind of the wrong mindset to have, because if you're just in it for the money, you're going to get burnt out. Like this whole conversation we're having, do it because you love it.
Right.
But what I say to them is like, yo, you can start monetizing with no followers. Like if you have your own product, your own service, run an ad on that. You know what I'm saying? You don't need to wait for someone to reach out to you. You don't got to reach out to anybody. If you're doing something already, you know what I'm saying? Push them to that. So I'm curious, where do you see the future of content creators going? Maybe even some of these platforms. And if you want to talk about, a product or something that you got going on.
Yeah, absolutely. So I definitely see content creators becoming their own brands. I think that is super important. I think for the longest time, we are always like, we want to work with all the big brands. We want to work with the big brands. And I think it's great to create relationships with big brands and just brands in general that you know and love, because partnerships are never, those things are never going to go out of style or popularity. Like, that's always going to be a thing. Just like how they used to work with celebrities, kind of like actors and musicians, now they're tapping into influencers, because content creators and influencers from YouTube to Instagram to TikTok and everything in between are becoming so popular that they're on the same playing field as actors and everything else, especially because
100%.
now actors and artists are flocking to social media to have that relatability with their fans, and so do content creators. And like, you guys came into our space, and now we're like in this all same playing field, so it's fair game. Like, if Nike wants to work with Serena Williams, which I mean they should, because obviously that's like a whole, that they built her whole brand with her and everything. But if they want to work with Serena Williams and they also want to work with Thalia LeBlanc, like, that's dope, because I've created my lane.
100%.
I have millions of audiences on this side, and you have like, there's so many different lanes that you can work with. So absolutely, I think that it's still going to be a thing. But I think that when we rely so much on brands to get paid, that's where things can get hard. And I say that from experience. At the beginning of the year, I was brand deals were flowing. It was awesome. I was making good money. And then towards the end of the year, things tapered because the economy shifted, inflation got worse, and brands' budgets were getting tighter, and they didn't want to take as many risks because they're like, well, we don't know what's happening in the next 6 months due to, all this stuff in the economy. So I was left just sitting there waiting, like, and even me reaching out to brands, oh, we're not doing collabs at this time. We're not doing collabs. And it was just like doors shutting in front of my face. And I would even say like Neutrogena, like I worked with Neutrogena and I had a big campaign that was coming out with them, and it actually never aired. Like this one commercial that we were doing together, it actually never aired. And that broke my soul because I was like, that was going to open up so many doors for me. And sometimes as a creator, you have to be prepared for campaigns not to air, not to come about. And it leaves you in a vulnerable position. So I feel like what every creator right now needs to focus on is creating your own brand. You are your brand. You are a business. And whatever you stand for, whatever that is, we're all unique, and we all have unique lenses that we tell our stories through. So if I want to do beauty and wellness and everything else, I can tell it through the lenses of, well, I have PCOS and my story is very unique, and there's other women that feel underrepresented in this department, and I want to be that person to create that, right? So I am right now working on creating my own brand. It's probably about 9 to 10 months to launch, and I haven't disclosed too much about it, but just know it's going to be like, I'm going to be a trailblazer in this when it comes out. So I'll be the first to let you know.
Talk about it
when it's dropped. But I found it, and that literally lit my ass on fire. When I felt like, oh my gosh, like I'm waiting on these brands to pay me, when I could just be creating my own thing.
Your own thing.
It's so important. And I think everyone should do it. And make sure that you protect yourself, especially Black and brown creators. We sometimes will pop out with stuff and start doing stuff, and we don't protect the name. You don't pull out, take out your LLC or your S Corp, trademark your stuff. I've already done all that for my business that's coming out next year, because I don't want, the Kardashians or whomever that have so much power and money, to come out and be like, oh, that's a good idea. Let me just go ahead and take that
100%.
name. So yeah, I think it's definitely.
No, that's extremely important, because I was just recently in a situation where I had to assess the situation to be like, do I really want to give up that much of the podcast this early on? I'll just leave it at that. But it's just, you really got to think about it. You really got to protect yourself.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I mean, that's powerful. I would love to transition a little bit, and I would love to know how you take care of your mental health as an entrepreneur and as a content creator, where you're constantly in the eyes of the public. You know what I'm saying? It's your job and whatnot. How do you take a step back and take care of your mental health?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, whenever you create content, be very cognizant of the fact that everything that you create content about is you opening a door for people to have opinions about. So the more you, I don't say niche all the way down, but let's say I talk about PCOS, or I talk about a little bit of entrepreneurship and just being a content creator in general. you can only really like look at those things that I talk about. I'm not telling you about my home life. I'm not telling you about, you know, this, that, and the third. Sometimes I talk about my grief journey, you know, after losing dad. Like, you know, I'm a human. I'm not a robot.
For sure.
So there's days that I'm like, yo, I'm sad. Like, I'm thinking about my dad, especially the holiday season is like hard. You know, he passed on Christmas Eve, which for Latinos, like Christmas Eve, that's Nochebuena. Like, that's when we eat and we get together, you know? So it's a hard time. So during these times too, I just try to pay attention to my emotions. I go to therapy. I started going to therapy. I'm not even going to lie and say that I go all the time. My little brother, 7 years younger, very smart. He's like, Thalia, you need to go to therapy because you're always so strong and eventually the camel's back is going to break.
Yeah.
So going to therapy, taking time for myself, going to work out, going on walks, and then just limiting what I consume, sometimes like limiting my comments. Like sometimes I post and go, especially like YouTube. I don't know if you asked me about like what platforms I think are coming about. YouTube Shorts is a big one.
Yep.
I think that's one that everyone should be paying attention to because
For sure.
there's already 18 million people on YouTube consuming content. Like you just put it and it's already there, and it's the same discoverability as like Reels or TikTok. But I posted my first YouTube short a few weeks ago, and the comments had me flabbergasted. I was like, YouTube is a different monster when it comes to comments. I was not prepared. So I talked to other YouTube creators. I was like, hey, look, I'm not big on YouTube. I just kind of started really posting, and I'm doing shorts because I'm more of a short form content creator. Even though I've done long form before, and they're like, post and go. Just post
and go.
And go. Pay attention to the positive ones, comment back so people know that you're commenting and that you're, you know, aware of the comment. But don't pay attention to anything else. Use your filtered words. Like, you know, if people are going to be talking crazy under your post, especially the whole shaving thing, sometimes there's some really dense people like, oh, you're a man, or oh, this. I'm just like,
just being out of pocket.
I'm like, are you 5 years old? Like, what is this?
Yeah. Man, that's crazy. So, and we can start wrapping this thing up pretty soon. But I'm curious, you know, for people creating content, you know, for you specifically, you moved away from focusing on one thing, from focusing on, you know, apartments and whatnot and housing and whatnot. Do you advise people to just create whatever they want? Do you think they should put together a strategy? Like, what's your advice on that?
Yeah, from doing it and failing and doing all kinds of stuff, I've learned definitely, if you ever read the book Atomic Habits, they talk about, yes, it's an amazing book, but they talk about habit stacking. And I use the same thing. So whatever that one thing that you're most passionate about, post content on that, solidify a community around that. Then you're going to start stacking sub niches on top of your niche. So now that I talk about PCOS all the time, well, I love beauty and I want to be able to work with beauty brands and also talk about beauty because I love beauty. So I'll be like, through the lenses of, because I have PCOS and I have to shave and stuff, like beauty is really important to me. So these are my favorite products. Like you just have to like slowly build on top of that. And eventually now people know I talk about skincare. I talk about beauty. I talk about PCOS. I talk about fashion and wellness and fitness. And all of these stem from that one thing that I started with. So yeah, think about habit stacking, but niche stacking and grow on it.
I love that. It's been a phenomenal conversation with you. It's been a great time. I think I'm gonna ask you one last thing. I'm gonna put you on the spot here, and we can wrap this thing up.
Okay.
And thank you for your time, and thank you for coming out to the studio and whatnot.
Of course.
But who is one person that needs to be on the Latin Wealth podcast? The only rule is you got to know them.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? If you say J-Lo, it's cool. You just got to know her. If you say Fat Joe, it's cool. You know what I'm saying? Who's one person that needs to be on the Latin Wealth podcast?
Somebody that needs to be on the Latin Wealth. Oh my gosh. And I have so many like really good Latinas that are out here doing stuff. But so I have a friend, her name is Angelica Cirillo. And she's actually like the multicultural head of like Beam Centauri. And I think she's doing something really awesome by, she works at this company that they own Jim Beam, Cavassier, Maker's Mark. And they're always putting on events and stuff and like providing like the alcohol and stuff for the businesses or the events for Black, Brown, and Asian communities. And I find that so dope. Freaking dope. And I think she's a Venezolana. Okay. So yeah, she's really dope, and she's a really great person in the Dallas area to just know. She's not doing like, you know, huge big things on social media, but she's doing things within the community using her
That's important.
her role in this company she's helped people like KG, Cosign, everything, like putting on events for us. She's helped me with events for other stuff that I do. She was so dope.
We'll have to connect with her and have her on for sure.
Yeah.
With that being said, thank you once again for hopping on the Latin Wealth podcast. Where can people reach out to you if they want to know more about your brand that's coming out, more about your content and things of that nature? Where can people reach out? And I'll link everything in the description of this podcast.
Yeah, for sure. The main place you can find me at is Instagram, and I have my link on my Instagram can lead you to everywhere else. But that is Thalia LeBlanc, and then from there you can find me on everything else. I got you linkity link.
Yeah. With that being said, you guys already know. Follow us on Instagram at Latin Wealth, and share this podcast episode with one other person that needs to hear this information. It was a phenomenal conversation. And with that being said, it's your boy Chris. Catch you guys next week. Peace.